Hello and welcome to a new episode of Talking Snooker with Phil Haig and Nick Metcalf. Once again, talking about the game we all love.
Yes, we are, and we're here the morning after the night before the Masters has come to an end, and Kyren Wilson is the champion. Interesting week. We sort of did half of it already. We'll get through the quarterfinals onwards here.
We will, Phil, and it was a tale of two halves. I think I said that on social media maybe rather than here, but I saw a message on there that I wrote on Twitter last night when I was flicking back, and that's kind of how it worked out. First half, I kept using that word underwhelming, which is a pretty kind word, really. I mean, some people were using a few more choice words for it. We had the 6-2s and that interesting sort of very odd stat that was coming our way, but it didn't really reach the parts. I said to him, didn't I, when we were last on there, those 6-2s will be over now. We had one more on Thursday actually, but in the first match back, if you like, for the next stage after we were on air, of course they did end. We saw some wonderful matches, didn't we? I mean, the Saturday semi-final, we'll get to that. Absolute fabulous drama. Final was a funny one. We've just been talking about it a bit off air. I was saying that I was actually at Ali Pally, and it's one of those little I think it was an old man complaint, or whether it's just a journo complaint. But you were kind of agreeing that when you're there, I didn't feel I was across sport generally. I didn't always feel like I was across the final. I was so busy sort of getting content and what have you, maybe too much, and maybe I got the balance wrong. I don't know. Catching up with people I know, it's sort of like I might have to get you to tell me, fill in the parts a little bit. But listen, it was a final that had a lot of mistakes at times, no question about it. I mean, John Higgins was pretty down in his performance. I said on my radio snooker service I was worried about him running out of steam. I thought Neil Foles made a great point on here, didn't he, about the World Championship and those young winners. Now, the Crucible was a very different event to this. You only have to win 28 frames to win this. But nevertheless, I speak as a 51-year-old. It's a bit tiring in those weeks, and I'm not out there in front of all those people playing snooker. I did speak to people last night. They all felt he ran out of steam a bit. And I think that may be the way it just was, particularly on the sort of last night, Sunday night. But Kyren 10-6, maybe to go back to you and start about the winner. I think you mentioned on social media adds to his CV. That's the way to say it. World champion, now Masters champion. To me, he's cemented his superstar status. He's very much the world number two. He still has eyes on world number one when he gets his act together, as he puts it in the ranking events. I'm sure he will. But great style of the game and a big, big triumph on that CV.
Yeah, huge. Yeah, so he's got 10 ranking titles, and he's added two more big non-ranking titles to his collection this year in Shanghai and this, and obviously this is the huge one. And yeah, I remember after Shanghai, I think I got very excited because um, I think it was after sort of that nightmare he had at the Crucible to then win that big one right at the start of the season. And we were talking about like where he could end up on the all-time greats list. And he's got a long way to go to catch up with some people on that. But this is the kind of win that does edge him up those sort of lists from wherever he was to wherever he is now. It's all subjective, isn't it? But these titles are huge. And yeah, it won't matter in the scheme of things that it was a bit of a stodgy final at times. It did look like John had run out of steam. Sometimes it's a bit sort of simplistic to put it like that, but I don't know how you could see it any other way, really. It was really missing a lot of quite easy chances, which you wouldn't expect him to miss at any point. And I guess he just sort of ran out of luck a bit as well. He did get a bit fortunate in some of those other rounds. But he will be really annoyed because Kyren was the better player and he was good, but he wasn't great. It wasn't he wasn't blowing anyone away with that performance. He had a little spell, those back-to-back tons at the end of the first session was very good. But other than that, it was just bits and pieces, really. So yeah, it wasn't a disastrous final, but it was
No.
definitely an underwhelming final after the drama of what we'd seen. Like you said, we had the sort of the 6-2 start, whatever you want to call that. Then it was really good, especially the semis. And then we all got hyped up, and everyone was like, "Well, this is going to be another decider." We've got so used to deciders in the last few days, but no, not quite. And I think what made it really underwhelming the final, really, other than Higgins won the first round, didn't he? And then there was a little spell at like, was it 7-6 or 6-5, where you thought, "Oh, well, could something happen here?" But for most of the final, it didn't really feel like he could win. and it's John Higgins, so he always can win. But you know what I mean. There wasn't really a feeling that this was going to be great, and also the play wasn't great. So that was a struggle for the final. But that's not Kyren's fault. He doesn't mind. He was a worthy winner, as John said.
Absolutely. No pictures or scorecards, as they always say, as they say about golf, but it could be any sport, you know. It's it's fine margins. I think it's maybe not out of all the tournaments in snooker, because that's a bit too much to get your head around, but maybe out of the very biggest ones. I find it's the Masters that's often the most confusing a little bit when it's over. I don't know whether that's because it's all a bit bang, 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 bang. You only play four matches. I'm not going to say that most of the time. I was thinking about this on the way home last night. It's a little bit like World Cups in football. Then I was going back through them, and actually, most of them I thought were deserving winners. But a couple of them I wasn't sure were. I wasn't sure, for example, Italy were the best team in Germany in '06. I thought there were quite a lot of good teams in that tournament. I wasn't absolutely convinced France were the best team in '98. They played well in the final before that. I'm not sure. They sort of battled a bit, struggled at times. What I'm getting at is ultimately a cup competition. And that's not remotely taking anything away from the winners. But was Cohen the very best player at the Masters? Maybe just about. But it's so close, isn't it? And I mean, he could have easily lost his quarter, could have easily lost his semi, but that's sport, you know. I mean, someone pointed out on social media, he did miss an incredible amount of balls for a tournament winner, Kyrie in a way, but that's the way it goes. He won the. I thought the last time Judd won it was pretty unbelievable. I mean, Ryan Day had about 15 chances to beat him in the first round, but he didn't do it. And ultimately, I suppose it comes down to Graham Dott said they're proper matches first to six, and they are just about. But I suppose that's why people say, and with good case, that there's nothing like the World Championship, because that really sorts out who's the best more often, I think, because they're longer matches. But first, this is a good early waffling here, Phil. This is right up there. But first to six, I think they can, you can sort of think, well, maybe we'll come to those matches and explain a little bit more what I was saying, because some of them were just, crazy. And first of all, let's just maybe, wrap up some of the details of the final. 3-1 to Kyren, 5-3 to Kyren. You mentioned those back-to-back tons. The reason, and you did mention it, the reason I sort of thought it was going to be okay, because Higgins pitched that one to go 6-5. It was pure drama. I mean, Kyren should have won that frame. Higgins eventually got the peak, didn't he, to get it? But then I always thought Kyren seemed to win the frames when it really mattered, all tournament really. And he went 7-5 ahead. Then it seemed like Higgins just was gone a bit for me then. 8-5, 9-5. John got one back, but yeah, Wilson still the deal. And I thought sort of agree that really he never looked like it wouldn't be Kyren's title. But I'm going to write a sporting life column later today, Phil. I think, I've got carte blanche to write about the Masters. What I think I'm going to say is that Kyren won the Masters for me because he has become snooker's most aggressive player. His shot choice staggers me at times. I'm like, mate, you're pushing the boat out here, but he just does it and does it so well. And I spoke to Ken Dockley about it on Radio Snooker, and he was kind of in agreement. I think Judd's got into his shell a little bit. It might be almost imperceptible at times, but if you're comparing the two and you're spotting the difference, Kyren is always taking the bold approach. Yes, it's risky. Sometimes it doesn't go right, but more often than not, it's done. I'm going to go back to you and say that guy's aggression, ultimately, in the key moments, for me, is probably what swung it for him.
Yeah, he was very much so, and it's not like John wasn't actually. There were certain times he kept going for doubles, which is obviously a Higgins
Yeah.
trademark, but sometimes a bit too much. So it was quite, this it got really sticky at times, but it wasn't so much out of players knocking balls safe on purpose or anything, and just going for the safe option. But yeah, no, I agree. Kyron really just back up his words when he says he goes for things and he's always going for the win. And he's a very different player from what he used to be in terms of
Yeah.
sort of pace around the table and how he goes about things. So yeah, no, he's good to watch. Hendry's very funny when he talks about that. He's very openly says that he didn't used to be much of a fan of him, but he is now. Because yeah, like you say, he's very bold at the table, and it works for him clearly. It's amazing what he's done since winning that world championship. He was a tournament winner, wasn't he? Um, but he's jumped up in status hugely, and he keeps cementing his place there. And it's going to be very interesting to see what he does the rest of the season now, because yeah, it's a funny one. I can't remember a situation quite like this where he's I think he's 22 on the 1 year list. So he's got work to do to get into the players and the tour. But yet he's won two enormous tournaments and they just happen to be non-ranking. So it's been a funny season in a way. But now with this and the queue and everything sorted, and hopefully Sophie, his wife, fine again after her health problems, he's back to where he was last season as one of the favourites for everything he goes in.
Absolutely right. And I think I might dial down the player of the season things. I got a little bit too obsessed with it last year. That's ultimately not that an important thing in snooker. But I will say one thing is that it could now easily be Kyren. And wouldn't that be sort of weird? I mean, we'll have to assess it properly at the end. But for someone that's been out of sorts for a lot of it, he's got two trophies now. You wouldn't back him against him at all being that come May. Who knows? Quarterfinals, Phil. Let's talk about them. John Higgins got the win, didn't he? 6-5 against Zhao Xintong. Well, I mean, I said he had to go via Lourdes, didn't he, before that? I mean, one shot where he doesn't even like cricket, as someone pointed out, memories of Del Boy there who falls on horses. But one snooker that he got, which was, Hendry said he'd never seen anything like it. I mean, it was a fluke that didn't lead to a pot. It led to a snooker. It was crazy. But then the plant, I mean, Higgins said he butchered it. But listen, in snooker, they always say, the experts, when you get that luck, I heard Parrott say 22 balls flying around the table. That's when they're all on the table, of course. But, funny things happen. Take advantage. That's what he did. I can't believe Zhao Xintong lost that match, even now a little bit when I think about it. But he did. Higgins got the job done and he won it 6-5. Judd Trump 6, Mark Allen 2. That was a bit of a disappointment, actually. It was 2-2. Mark hadn't been well, had he, unfortunately, Mark Allen? He talked about having food poisoning, and I wonder whether he didn't quite seem himself towards the end of that match. That may have been a factor, I don't know. Wu Yi's a Zhao Gudong was a surprise. 6-0 to Wu.
Yeah.
Stunning scoring. Yeah, we thought it'd be close, didn't we? Most of us in the game. 1-1-2, 93, 60, 84, 97. I like Parrott again. Dinner's off the menu that night. I don't know if it was. He was cooking for the night before, wasn't he?
Yeah.
I don't think Hendry would have liked that. And then Kyren Wilson 6-0, Robertson 5. You were right to say get the takeaway in, Phil. What a match that was. I mean, talk about fractions. Ridiculous. Neil just not getting on the red at 5-4 when the black was respotted. He said to the referee, put it back on again, mate. I think it was Marcel, but it was nothing was doing. He couldn't get through to it. That was when Kyren's aggression took over. I mean, God, the things he takes on. It worked for him. He won 6-5. But Neil would have been sick after that, really, I'm sure. He saw him talking in an interview. It was a great match, but he just happened to lose it. But yeah, that was the quarterfinals that put this Masters, Phil, back on the map.
Yeah, it really came alive, didn't it? Because even they don't all need to be close. The 2-6-5s there were great, but also if you get a walloping 6-0 with a load of breaks, that's also good. So yeah, those three were great. Trump Allen, not the best. It was a great clearance from Judd to nick the fifth, wasn't it? And then he sort of
Yeah.
was much stronger from there on in. I've got those quotes because these were really interesting. They caused a bit of a stir. I posted them. This was from a TNT interview that Judd did with
Oh, yeah.
Radzi and Rianne on there. And it was just an interesting thing because they basically, Alan's got a good record against Trump, and he was just asked if he's a bit of a bogey player and why he struggles to play his best against him. And Judd said, the rest of the top 16 I know are going to score heavy. Mark misses a few balls, and I don't like that because I sometimes think I can play badly and get away with it. The other players I know I have to play unbelievable snooker. Mark recently has played quite slow, so I didn't know what to expect. Sometimes I try too hard against him because I don't want the balls to get messed up. So, it wasn't the most complimentary answer to why
No,
you struggle against a certain player, was it? But
no.
it was interesting. I mean, the reactions, a lot of people, it was sort of split. A lot of people sort of said, could see where he was coming from. A lot of people thought it was very harsh. Including Mark Williams replied saying that was very harsh.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I don't think Mark will like to have heard or read those quotes, so I don't know how he'll respond when given the chance.
Mm.
But yeah, that was the what's the operative? Stand out, stand in match from the quarterfinals. The other three were good. Um, but yeah, Higgins that flew that snooker, but also that one where he gone for that quite really hard plant and
Yeah.
then fluked it. And then the flukes are always made so much better when then you see the red's gone in, then you look at the white, it's like landing
Oh,
perfectly on the black as
yeah.
well. Just yeah, unbelievable. For Higgins had a lot of support in there, so he sort of he was riding that wave, but you had to feel bad for Zhao because he really had his man at 5-3. Higgins looked a bit gone, and then we're just getting insane luck. But I suppose talk about aggressive shots. I think Zhao did play one too many in that final frame. It was the last red,
Mm.
wasn't it? Where it was really tough. It cost him the match eventually, but again, that's his game, so he's going to do it. But yeah, I think the quarterfinals, we would have been stunned, although we kept saying it through the first round, these 6-2s are going to end. But yeah, I was confident as well they would end there, and they ended spectacularly with that Higgins Dow match, which was great. And then Wilson Robertson, probably even better. So yeah, great quarterfinals.
Yeah, they really were. And then even greater semi-finals. I mean, look, in sport, you're in the sports media field exactly the same as I am. Every Saturday, Super Saturday these days. Every Sunday, Super Sunday. Some of them are great. If Liverpool are playing Manchester United, it's super. If we're going to play in Bolton, it's less super, isn't it? But
Well, yesterday was a super Sunday. It wasn't that super, was it? Wolves, Newcastle, and Villa, Everton. Not the best.
with not many goals as well, absolutely. One of the many things I missed in sport by being a live sport, of course. But yes, this was a Super Saturday. Maximum number of frames, great drama, great theatre. There was hardly much of a gap time-wise between the two. So, I mean, we had people have busy lives. You can't always, not everyone can sit in front of the snooker all day. But if that was your biscuit, you wanted to do that. If that was your tea and biscuits, Phil, you were laughing because it was great, great theatre. I mean, oh wow! I mean, talk about a sore one for Judd Trump. I mean, he had this run of beating Higgins. It looked like it would continue. It was 3-0, wasn't it? And 5-3. Now, I let into listeners a little bit of a secret. I sometimes message you and say, I think I can get away with just about anything on Twitter within the realms of reason. I'm just talking about silly sort of banter about snooker and telly. I'll make some, truly outrageous claims and make some pretty outrageous sort of jokes on there. But that's one thing you can't do. I've realised very easily is put shots, screenshots or videos up of snooker shots because I get it a bit because there are some good players out there and some pros, former pros, and they'll say, well, actually this and that and actually and yeah, and look, there is nuance. It wasn't a simple brown. I get it. He had to dig down. He had to put some pace on it. It was dead straight. Said it to Ken Doherty again yesterday in an interview you can hear on Radio Snooker. It wasn't a gimme. But come on, you expect him to get it. I mean, John Higgins was like, come on, of course you expect him to get it. And listen, Judd Trump, as other people have pointed out, maybe has a bit of a history of these. We never forget that final in COVID, of course, against Neil at the UK. But this is over long careers. Of course, he'll miss crucial balls. But I just can't believe, in a way, he didn't close the deal. But again, Higgins did it. He won 6-5. Um, Very sore one for Judd. That's the only way you can say it. But what a victory for John. No wonder he was so proud of himself beating the world number one. And then that night again, I mean, Wu Yisa could have won against Kyren Wilson. Two reds were close to each other. You maybe say it wasn't a gimme, but it was a virtual gimme. Should have got it. He was well in at 5-4. Wu won 3 frames in a row from 4-2 down, was on a roll. Looked like he could just win it 6-4. Kyren not doing much wrong, sitting in his chair. Wu misses. Kyren again steps in with that aggression of his. And, he made a big break in the last frame to seal it, didn't he, if memory serves? And that was, you know, was it the Robertson one or that one? He got the big break. I haven't got it written down here, actually. He got a century I think it
Century in the
was,
final. Yeah.
that's it, yeah, to win that one. We left with a Wilson Higgins final. But, Phil, all I say to you is, the fine margins thing, you know, of course, it could have been a Judd Trump Wu as a final. There was so little in it. So Kyren was the rightful Masters champion. He's a brilliant champion in this sport, but sometimes the fine margins to your head in, eh?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, especially when it's like that, those back-to-back deciders, because it could have been any combination of those four players, couldn't it? It was so close to being the two runners up in the semis. Yeah, I know what you mean about that, like that Judd Brown. Like, there's always reasons to miss snooker shots. It's an incredibly difficult game. Like, there's
Yeah.
no one's ever saying
we
like,
showed
oh,
that in that video of the
yeah,
Mio. Yeah.
yeah. So no one's ever saying like, oh, it's absurd that you miss anything. But it's the world number one. That is a pot that he would expect to get. There was reasons why it was awkward, of course, but it's the same when in any sport, isn't it? You see cricketers drop catches. Now, any cricket catch, almost all catches in cricket are very difficult. The pace they come at, what the
Mm,
ball is like,
yeah,
what your vision is like with the crowd there. But you expect them to do it because they're the best in the world. And yeah, you would expect Judd Trump to pot that brown for sure. Um, but he didn't. And yeah, he's just had this mad thing about deciding frames. He's played seven deciding frames this season, lost all of them, which that would be unusual for any player in the game, actually, I think. Um, but for the world number one to have that record is absolutely mad. So he needs
yeah.
to sort it out. I don't think it's a thing he's had all of his career. Um, I mean, the one that
No,
pops into mind is that break in Saudi to win half a
yeah.
million quid
Not that long
in a
ago. Yeah,
deciding frame. Um, so yeah, it's just something he'll need to get over, and then I'm sure it'll just quickly be a weird stat from the past. But he just needs to get over it because John Higgins has spoken this before, and he seemed like he'd got over it this week. Uh, but until this week, he said when things go close, he can just feel it in his head, and he's just expecting things to go wrong, and that can make things difficult. And maybe that's what Judd was thinking when he has a shot like that. He's thinking about the getting the cue ball back. Whereas that's a pretty normal thing for Judd Trump to do. But if you're starting worrying about what goes wrong, then things can go wrong.
absolutely. And Phil, we were left in the final. Kyren Wilson 10, John Higgins 6. Commiserations to John. Congratulations to Kyren. Thank you for everybody for putting the tournament on. We've got some correspondence to come soon. I think it's a nice set, not an absolute load in, but Masters based, and I think it's all very valuable. We'll come to that. Crowds, very good. In a way, the way I put it at one time, forgotten what day, late on, I think, the crowds weren't actually that real a factor compared to normal, partly because of the 6-2s and but they came into their own a bit, and Saturday was noisy. Often is great day. I always think Masters semi-final Saturday, and obviously it ended up being two epic matches. Didn't leave early, and that was one thing I was really noticing. On television, I was kind of surprised because listen, I'm a train man, I'm a rattler man. I was telling you about my journey home last night. The last train is quite late, but then most people tend to get seem to drive, and that's obviously you can leave at any time. Nevertheless, that happens at a lot of tournaments. People do seem to leave earlier, but I was so impressed. Maybe it's just the importance of the Masters really sticking around. By the way, you should say that the shuttle bus, we were laughing about it. Ken Doherty driving punters up, put on by midnight. Yeah,
Superb.
yeah, I was a bit late for that, but they were driving punters up the hill. Um, yeah, so I like that. They were sticking around. Big thing, I thought. Setup's very good. We'll come to it in a minute. Punt. Look, the good outweighs the bad at Ali Pally. I said it till I'm a broken record. I still firmly believe that there's no leg room really, or there's just not enough. Anyone that's suggesting there is enough leg room, I don't know what reason they would have for saying that because height doesn't really matter. That's how you're made. But I happen to be on the tall side, and yeah, those seats they don't have a massive amount of leg room. But the alternative, I'll say, onto that one is Phil. Okay, you could have three or 400 less people, a bit more leg room, but that's far less money for the tournament and for the sport and far less atmosphere. That's the way I put on that. TV, decent, not sure about coaches doing matches. I don't want to say it
Mm.
about the individuals. They're all great, great people. And, I class them as people I get on with tremendously in the game. I just think it's weird. I just think it's not that necessary. They're great voices that could do other matches. I just think they've got such an investment in it, and that's the way I'd say it. But generally, TV, familiar faces, familiar voices, very good coverage. I like the balance of Rachel and Ramsey doing it at different times on TNT, and obviously Hazel impeccable as ever on the beat. A couple of mentions of you, Phil Haig. Of course, you're too humble to mention it, but that was nice. And yeah, mate, back to you maybe then, and a word about TV coverage. Coaches on matches. Come on. I'm not sure about
Yeah,
it.
no, I don't think there was, and they've actually just been doing that recently. But then I heard Joe Perry was on with John Virgo in another match, and it wasn't Neil. I can't remember which one it was, but he's excellent. He's a really good commentator.
He's superb,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, so get him on. But it doesn't have to be Neil. I think it was at the UK, wasn't it? When it felt like Lee Walker was on with Mark's and Joe was on with Neil's. And I can't remember if I mentioned it on here. If I did, I'm sorry, but I did ask Joe about this, and he sort of said like, "Oh, obviously he's impartial anyway, but he's trying to be extra impartial." because it's Neil. But then all the viewers and listeners know that he's not impartial because he's badged up as being his coach there. So it'd be ridiculous for him to not want him to win. So it's just a weird situation to be in. I think the have him in the studio as a pundit, that's the perfect place for that because you can cut to them in a break and you can ask them what they're thinking and why he's done this and that. That's an ideal place to have someone's coach. But
Which Joe did
but
one nil match actually.
well, great, yeah. Well,
Yeah,
I think that's perfect for it. That's the ideal person you want there. But yeah, not so much commentating on the game, I don't think. But that's how they've thought the opposite of that, haven't they? They've
yeah.
shoehorned those guys in specifically to do that. But I agree, it's a little bit weird. But yeah, otherwise all good. Yeah. The usual treats of choosing between TNT and BBC. And it's great when you can sort of you watch the post-match interview on BBC and then flick straight over to Discovery, and then they've got the second one on there. And I think it's a bit of a bonus with Discovery that actually because they've warmed up a bit, they're a bit more relaxed, and they've come off, they've had a bit of time, and they're a bit more. Yeah, I think they're just a bit more chatty on that bit. But yeah, it's nice to have both. Um, and the last thing I'd say about the Masters, actually, I think we did mention Wu years there, but another big mention for Wu because that is an amazing run-on debut to
God,
get to a
yeah.
deciding frame of the semis. Very, very nearly. I know. I suppose it's one of those where you just get speak about that ready missed to win the semi more than anything, but unbelievable run, and he's just continuing to quite quickly build into a genuine sort of star of the game at the top level. Another 75 grand, not in his rankings, but in the bank. And it's not that long ago. I think someone was telling me when he first moved to the UK and they had very, very little. He was sort of staying in a little apartment and had to like share a bed with his dad when he first moved here.
Mm.
So he's come a long way in a short space of time, and he deserves it because he's a wonderful player, and he's um it's quite hard to pin down, but says it. Yeah, everyone just likes his vibe, likes watching him.
Mm.
Seems like a good
Oh yeah.
lad. Um, so he's just naturally likable, which is a lovely trait to have, isn't it? So yeah, no, just congratulations for him on a great week.
Yeah, amen to that. I had to think. That's making it about me. It's ridiculous. I was glad to get the Murphy saying, "Well, he could be world champion," line, which I ummed and ahed about because you hear it a lot about players. I think well, it's not exactly a new line to say about anybody, but there's something about Wu, and I'm really glad that even though I didn't get much out of Murphy in the sense he went out first day, that line kind of had a bit of traction to it. And yeah, I totally agree. I mean, looks his fixtures and fittings, but he does look the part. He looks the part. He plays the part. I love the likening to the late Paul Hunter. By the way, very poignant. Got to say again, BBC putting images up last night, reminding us 20 years. We'll have our own episode, won't we, Phil, later this year to remember the late Paul Hunter and what a special part he'll always be. In fact, just in the press room last night, everyone was sort of reveling a bit in those memories the BBC put up, and there was a sort of nice vibe in there. As soon as Paul came up, of course, there's that silence because the heart sinks. The heart will always sink because we know we lost Paul at just a tragically early age. But of course, the memories, thank God we have those, and that's special. And we'll always remember him, of course, in this sport very deeply. Wu, yeah, fabulous. Great talent. I say world champion. It could be this year. Unlikely to be, but the guy is something else, so let's wait and see. I can't wait to see him play for sure in all the tournaments to come. But yes, good words from you there, Phil. Yeah, just made me think about one line I always loved. You talk about the catches in cricket, and Danny Baker always says, the ball's too hard. It is too hard. I mean, my cricket career was hopeless. I don't think that's going to make wisdom, but the ball's too hard. A tennis ball, I've had a chance. It's crazy. Anyway, should we get to the correspondence?
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Let's first say name check on this Masters Review episode. You are listening to the Talking Snooker podcast with Phil Haig and Nick Metcalf. Kyren Wilson has won the Masters title for the first time. Congratulations to him. Let's go to some correspondence then from people that have been there. The real people, Phil. James Wilson here. Hi there. Just read your tweet, so thought I'd message you and hopefully it helps you out however you need it. Yeah, we were asking for people that have been there. For context, I am a first-time snooker goer. Overall, the day was good, not too busy in the fan arena food place compared to other sporting events. Perhaps would have been good for a couple of proper tables to give fan experience, etc. But nothing really to complain about other than cardboard cups. That's all right, starting it. Snooker watching itself, very hot, and you certainly needed water filled up if you were there for a period of time. Felt the seats were extremely uncomfortable for back and not enough room for legs in main section. I was also a carer for my brother in the disabled section, who thought the seats were very bad and uncomfortable for him. He, as did I, also thought the wheelchair spaces were far too narrow. He was leaning into me to make sure others were okay. This wasn't too much of a problem as not all the wheelchair spaces were filled, but there's certainly not enough room if there were to be. Also at the front, and especially for disability, it's hard to look up, and any screens are almost vertical. My brother is going back to the final with his wife and is worried about this. Overall, we had a good day as a group, but we all reported seats were very uncomfortable and too close together. We would not have managed a further frame. Venue way too hot. Hope this helps, James. That came a few days ago, actually, and looking at again, that seems like there's a lot of negative stuff there. Look, I have to say, having been there yesterday, it's extremely hot in there. There's no question. It's very, very hot. I mean, you know, you don't need more than a t-shirt for absolute sure, and that's in the depths of winter. But you're inside, it's boiling. You know, that's the way I'll say it. But good views. People from WST may well be listening to this. Who knows? I'm sure that's valuable feedback. And Richard Perry is next, Phil.
Yeah, just before that, a colleague of mine went as a fan as well, and he just said he echoed that boiling review. I've heard that from everyone who's been there. It's just like
Yeah.
insanely hot, and obviously it's cold outside as well, so you're especially not used to it. Here's Richard Perrins, dear Phil and Nick. I hope you are well. We are. I just wanted to give some feedback on the Masters. I haven't been to many snooker venues, but I'd struggle to see how they could get much better than Ali Pali. They have enhanced the fan zone massively from a couple of years ago when I last went. Plenty of food, etc., and experiences, and also a big screen, which watching felt a bit like watching the World Cup or something. The atmosphere for semi-final Saturday was amazing. A great addition was the Midnight Club, two match tables that you could play on for free. Luckily, it wasn't that well advertised, which was great as it meant you could actually play. The only minor complaint was the arena, particularly for Wu versus Wilson, got incredibly hot. But I'm not sure much could be done about that. Anyway, thanks for your great pod as always, Richard. Oh, lovely to hear a good review there, but again, the heat.
It's great out the back. There's so much space. Since I opened it up, was it the first one last year? I think it may have been such a big difference. If you go to the World Darts Championship, I'm sure plenty of you will out there, or a fair few of you at least. It's the big room out the back that they. In fact, maybe that's where it's switching now. I don't know which one I can't say exactly where darts is switching to. Maybe it's that room, but it's that hall out the back, which for the darts they use the whole thing. For snooker they use half of it. Half of it seems to be for a load of equipment, the telly people. I mean the sort of inner telly people, if you like, the ones that are doing the recording and all that. And then the other half is for fans. And it's so roomy in there. It's such a big difference. And food, I've got to say, you know, about a decade ago, maybe even a bit less, there wasn't one, I don't think, food item at the Masters that wasn't coloured brown. I mean, you you can really barely get more than a sausage roll there. I'm not kidding. There was nothing really. Sausage roll and a bag of crisps, I think, used to get every year. That's not the case now. There's so much there. There's a terrific amount of, you know, nice pie stall and big coffee stands, you know, big hot dog stands, you know, all sorts of different things. Pizzas available, you know, it's all sort of fast food and stuff, but that's like every event. Of course, that's the way that it's done at every sporting event. You're not going to get sort of, three-course meal. Of course you're not. But it's choice, Phil. That's what I'm getting to. I can see you laughing away.
Yeah.
Save
Well,
me
you
from
could,
this
if you got the posh
food
seats in the
nonsense.
Century Club, maybe
Well,
you could
that's
get a
true.
three-course meal.
You can, of course. I forgot that. I saw Cliff up there, by the way. I caught a bit of Cliff up there. I saw a bit of him on telly and people that I've known that have been there. I'm not sure who he was in tandem with. It's normally a double act. Don't think it was Dennis. I didn't spot Dennis, but certainly Cliff was doing the round. Great to see him.
Mm.
I saw Marco Staiano, by the way, last night.
Oh, superb.
Met him for the first time. He's on a Radio Snooker broadcast coming soon. And well, I do a bit of commentary and reaction to the final. And he was saying, I haven't checked it, but it sounds right. And Cliff said to him that Cliff's now the only survivor that played in the Masters in '75. The only one still alive. He's quite a piece of snooker history, isn't he? I think he's just turned 78, Cliff. And in fact, he came in the press room last night. He was leaving with his bags and going off somewhere else. And he is a living, breathing part of the history of this sport now. There's something so special about seeing Cliff. He just goes back generations, to that world title of 80, the black ball of 83. And, these things are important, aren't they?
Yeah.
We're all about the game now, but seeing Cliff, it's like, you just have, everyone sort of takes a bit of taken aback a little bit. That's Cliff, he's like there's something, special about him, eh?
Oh, big time, yeah. Because especially when you start to sort of lose people of that generation. I mean, we have done it a long time ago, but it happened again recently with like Ray and Terry and Clive Everton as well. Sort of big faces of that era. So it makes you treasure the ones we've still got. And yeah, Cliff goes back a long way, but he's got sort of the energy of a younger man, I would say, and certainly
Mm.
has not lost any of his charisma either. He's superb.
Yeah, very good way of summing it up. Let's move on to Peter then. Brilliant fan experience. Comfy seats. So there we are. Comfy seats. The actual seats to sit on uh, seem to be okay. I would agree with that. I would, plenty of leg room. So there we go. Lots of food and drink options. Huge lively fan zone, which is nice and warm. Plenty of toilets. Even get a bit of exercise on the walk up the steep hill from the car park. Obviously, merchandise stand still awful. So a bit of a bar there at the end. Peter must have had an end of the row seat or one at the front because there's not plenty of leg room. I mean,
Well, it depends how long
I
your
don't,
legs are, doesn't it?
I don't like to challenge the punters too often, but that's anyway. But listen, there we are. That's Peter's view. Yeah, it does depend on that, Phil, of course. And another one from Tony.
Well, I'd say Peter's a glass half full man for even a bit of exercise on the walk up the steep hill, because that's a negative for a lot of people. But Peter's looking on the positive side there, which is to be commended. Here's Tony. I had a great time at the Masters. The big fan zone area around the back with the big screens is brilliant. I would say there isn't a massive amount of legroom in the seats, but as you said, Nick, if we want big crowds and big atmospheres, perhaps that's the price we need to pay. Yeah, I think the consensus is generally the legroom could be better. Yeah, for sure.
Definitely. But I say a bit, like I was saying it glibly. I mean it. They're the real people. They're the ones that have been. And I just say, Phil, I loved it at Ali Pally yesterday, the final on Sunday, because even people are outside. It's a nice mild weekend. Actually, it was a real mild. I said to you, unfortunately, you said it wasn't quite the same at North. It's a small country, but it's big enough to have different weathers. And down here, very mild. And people were milling about, and not all of them were the snooker. But what I liked is, I even, as is my want, I tend to sort of chime in on other people's conversations on occasion, and I can hear someone say, "I think didn't Judd Trump?" I said, "Oh, he lost the semi." "Oh, yes, oh, he did." Someone was chatting away, another couple of people about the snooker, and I kind of like that. I think they weren't going to it, but I don't want to just big up the B because I think it's the case for ITV and Channel 5 too. But when those events are on a sort of widespread outlets, I just get the feeling that it breaks through a bit, and I get that feeling. I just talking to cabbies during the World Championship in particular, or different people around, they're in touch with the tournaments. They're in touch with what's happening. And I kind of like that. They might not know the nitty gritty of the day-to-day stuff like we would, but it's cutting through. That's important, I think, in any sport. And that's why a lot of sport is, without going to a different debate, that's been a problem for cricket, I think, and maybe others too, maybe golf too. It doesn't cut through enough to those general conversations, the general feeling. And I suspect people at work today, this morning, on Monday morning here in the UK and elsewhere, they'll have been in touch with the snooker. They may not have seen it all night, but they've been, oh, I saw a bit. Yeah, Kyren won, didn't he? Yeah, Higgins was in the final. And those things are important, I think. And I really notice that at these big, big tournaments that are on free to air a lot. And, TNT, which I'm part of that team now, they're marvellous servants for snooker. Absolutely marvellous. They're the permanent home. They'll be the ones doing Germany. They'll be the ones doing Welsh. They'll be the ones doing etc. etc. And their service is absolutely impeccable and excellent. There'll always be something about the weeks when it's on a sort of network where millions have access to. I haven't seen the viewing figures for last night actually. My suspicion is they might not have been enormous, but actually they're finished between 10 and half 10, so you never know. I'm not sure what else is on various big television shows, I'm sure. But anyway, I really like the way it cut through, and Ali Pali's a hell of a venue for. It's an historic venue, for all the sort of little bits of negative stuff about Lego and everything else. It's a famous old building there. It's never sort of like vanilla. You never like, I've got to Ali Pali. What a vanilla day I've got ahead of me. There's always something about that place, isn't there? Because it's up that hill. It's historic. It's got huge history. Yes, it needs a deep clean, but which building of a 150-year-old doesn't, And it's got them. I love telly. It's got great BBC history, great television history, and it's just, yeah. I mean, you're an Ali Pali. I know you're a fan of Ali Pali too. It's got something about it, eh?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's an iconic arena, and all the various things it has there helps with that. The darts makes it even more of a spectacle. They did a nice thing before the last session, I think, certainly on the last day. Sort of musical acts that have played there, they made a big deal about that. There were a lot of famous gigs there. And yeah, look, it's not perfect nowhere it is. Even just getting to and from it is not that easy all the time. But obviously, the organisers of snooker and darts have a fabulous relationship with it, so I think we're going to be there for a while. And I'm fine with that. Yeah, it's good, and yeah, the atmosphere on Sunday. Um, you could see John Higgins absolutely loving it, Kyren as well, but it's obvious on John's face when he's just like buzzing about it. And he said so at the end, and he was very gracious when he was saying conditions are beautiful, fans couldn't have been better, the arena's perfect. I was just useless, I think he said, which was very John Higgins to be fair. But yeah, no, great venue, great tournament. Not a classic edition, probably.
No, no.
Um, we probably had five really memorable games and then a load of forgettable ones, which probably isn't enough to sort of put it in the classic edition category, but still some great highlights in there.
Oh, agreed. Yeah, let's save the really special editions for vintage edition status. I think we can't be handing out vintage for this. I think that would be a bit foolhardy. There was too many matches that didn't reach the parts, but as ever, it sticks in the memory, the big moments, that semi-final Saturday. But yeah, that's sport. Not everything can be special. Phil, you in a very gracious way have been doing this on your lunch break. We're not going to do a marathon. I think I'm going to guess we start about 10 past 40 minutes, I think maybe. So Brian Campbell, we're gonna say again next time because it's a nice little email, isn't it, about football? But this rate, we're doing it at Michaelmas. We keep putting it off. But Brian, we will come back
We
to
will.
you and do that next time. And we haven't got an awful lot more to do, Phil. I mentioned my sporting life column. That's coming up soon. I'll be talking about the Masters and Kyren Wilson's aggression. That's what I think won it for him. That's the line I'll be taking. Plenty on Radio Snooker. Ken Doherty on there. Ben Wollaston coming soon. Got some commentary and reaction on there as well. And I've been asking punters a question in my new format, 20 for 20. Good one, by the way. Sharpens the senses, Phil, when you're up against the clock a bit. Asking them, do they prefer a dominant figure in snooker or the titles to be shared around? I think the majority went for shared around,
Mm.
but it's an interesting question. It really is. It's a ponderable. I like periods of both, I guess. That's probably the obvious thing. But that was interesting. So if you want to listen to that, Phil, you've been so busy. You've had so much going on. I know great stories all the time from you. And what have we got coming up? It's the German, isn't it? Off to bloody Berlin.
Yeah, well, yeah, there's a load of stuff. Well, the Championship League carries
Championship
on
League, yeah.
today. With a blockbuster group. Kyren was actually meant to be in that, but he's understandably dropped out and is not going to play Leicester today. Ollie Lines is playing, but he's playing with Bingham, Neil Robertson, Zhao Guidong, Selby, Wu Yiza, and Zhao Xintong. That's a decent group, isn't it? Decent stuff.
Yeah.
And then we've got a load of amateur stuff. The WSF Championship, the Women's Championship, and the Junior Championship is all starting today or in the
I
coming
think it's
days.
today. Yeah.
Yeah. And then yeah, the German Masters starts in Berlin on the 26th, so a week today, next Monday. Um, so a bit of a quieter week in terms of the professional tour, outside just the Championship League coming up. But plenty of amateur snooker, which I think I'm sure you'll be able to find on YouTube somewhere, if you have a look. And then off to Germany, which is one of the highlights of every calendar year.
It is. Now, we haven't talked about it off the air. Could have done, of course. We haven't sorted it out yet, but I think we'll try and get an episode in before that, the start of that, so we look forward to it properly. Do it justice. It's a special tournament. If you are going to Berlin, I know plenty of people that are from the UK and also different parts of Europe. It's a special tournament. 15 years old. Can you believe it? I mean, talk about time flying. My goodness. I always said with that one, it hit the ground running. It wasn't like, oh, this will take a few years. It was great for the start. It's a brilliant, brilliant tournament. Great venue. We'd love to hear from you if you're going, if you're planning to go. Talking Snooker at yahoo.com or tweet us at Talking Snooker. I think we're going to shut off, Phil. Kyren now will be thinking, I'm going to strike gold the rest of the season. If he's coming into form now, a bit too much. While I gave the BBC a bit of light earlier, a bit of shade as well. A little bit too much of the world as if that's the next thing coming up. There's so much coming up. Actually, I thought there was a little bit of that. Should say about Kyren. We don't think we said about it. Kyren turning it round from the UK. That was obviously a big narrative. But by the same token, it was a big narrative, and it is a hell of a turnaround from how he was at the UK. But I also did think a little bit, well, he explained at the Scottish he was feeling a lot better. There's always that thing, there's been no snooker. And maybe, I'm a big Triple Crown person, so maybe I'm part of that guilty party. But there's always a bit too much of, what's he going to do at the World Championship, mate? Well, what about Berlin first, all these other bloody events? Come on.
Yeah, yeah, true. Yeah, there's plenty of time to go out of form if you want to look at it on a negative slant. But yeah, I mean, he'll be looking at it very positively, won't he? He'll be seeing this first half of the season as so unbelievably quiet by his recent standards that he can already start to hit good form, and he's got plenty in the tank to go all the way through to Sheffield. But yeah, he's got a lot to do before then. Kyren's not someone who's going to skip Germany, Hong Kong, the Welsh Players Tour, the World Open still to come. So yeah, plenty going on before Sheffield. But having said that, this will make him right. If he wasn't going to be one of the favourites anyway, which he probably was, it's just edged him slightly back up that betting list.
Absolutely. And as I turned round my head last night, I had a brief pop into the after tournament party, and the way the Wilson family were reveling in it, and the way Kyle looked like he was uh, knocking back a few of those shots. I'm not entirely. Taylor Wilson said in the press conference, "You're playing tomorrow. You're playing." Obviously, that's changed. He said, Carl said, well, "I'm going to play with a hangover then," but obviously they didn't think that was the wise move in the end. Great to see you, Phil. We'll be back, won't we, before the German Masters? So congratulations to Kyren Wilson, and all the best, sir. Have a great week.
Yes, pleasure as always. Thanks everyone for listening, and we'll see you very soon.
Keep your thoughts coming. Talking Snooker at yahoo.com or tweet us at Talking Snooker. Congratulations to Kyren Wilson. It was a bit of a slow burner of the Masters, but in some ways we got there in the end. I hope you enjoyed the highlights of it anyway, folks. And we say, for now, from your old friends, Phil Haig and Nick Metcalf, cheerio.